Hey there everybody, James here, and today we are talking about the best dress watches for men and for ladies, and we are looking at one of my favorite watchmakers, that is Jaeger-LeCoultre. Now the first reason JLC offers the best dress watches out there is simple, and it's their Moonphase indicators. Now this watch is from their Master Ultra Thin collection, and they do have several watches in this collection with varying complications. This one obviously has a perpetual calendar, and it includes probably my favorite complication from JLC, which is the Moonphase. So down at the bottom of the dial, JLC's Moonphase is absolutely stunning. They cut an opening into the dial and they make it look like clouds. You can kind of see there's little clouds there. Then they take a tiny round disc, and you can see it back there, and they use enameling on it. And this is a technique where the disc itself gets covered with this powdered glass, and then they bake it in an oven several times to get it to be, in the case of the dial, translucent. In the case of the Moonphase disc, it's this nice dark kind of night sky color that you can see there. And you really can see the artisanal nature of what JLC is doing with these Moonphase indicators. Then they have a little scatter on there of black polished stars, and you can see them kind of reflecting in the light a bit here as I move the watch around. And the Moonphase itself, or the moon itself. So the moon and the stars are both all black polished, and it's such an interesting thing to see at the bottom of the dial. There are several dial variants of the Moonphase watch by itself. There's a black dial, a blue, silver. There's even a new textured copper dial that are all stunning, really. I'd own any of them. I did used to have the black dial variant, and what the Moonphase adds is just such a perfect touch of curiosity and intrigue on this elegant, simple dial. Now, if you agree, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. Now, the second reason that JLC offers the best dress watches is their variety of complications, like I mentioned. JLC also has several date versions of this exact same watch. So this is just their Master Ultra Thin case. And though this one is a perpetual calendar, they have several date variations of this. The date models use just a date display, while other versions of the watch, like this one, use more of a pointer style date that you can see right at 9 o'clock there. And they've even found a way to make the date window on their date version of the watches look really appropriate. They even have a couple of unique dial colors that you won't find on their other models. You also have the Reserve de Marche, which is essentially a power reserve. It's got a small seconds indicator instead of center seconds, and a pointer date, again, like this one. So that's the Reserve de Marche, which is just the power reserve. And then, of course, you have this watch, which is the perpetual calendar. And I like JLC's perpetual calendars because they've found a way to make the dial very balanced. So if I took this dial and if I cut it in half in any direction, if I sliced it down the middle vertically or horizontally and folded the dial onto itself, I'm going to have basically the same thing on both sides. And that to me is really important because when I think about a dress watch, I want it to be interesting, but I also want it to be subtle. And I like the idea of displaying the elegance of a watch without being too bold. And that's why I appreciate the symmetry that you'll find with Jaeger-LeCoultre. So you have the day, you have the date, you have the month, you have the year, and then even millennium discs along with the Moonphase. And occasionally you'll find special versions of them like this one. So this watch in particular was a 100-piece limited edition from the 2019 release year, and actually it had been my grail watch for several years. So this version of the perpetual calendar has a guilloche and enamel dial. So let's just talk about that for a second. So the guilloche offered here comes in two forms. One is radial. And so guilloche is when you have a lathe typically that will cut a pattern into the dial base, and you can see that this one, like I say, has a radial cut where they start under the cannon pinion, right in the center, out to the edges of the dial, and they go around the entire thing, creating this really beautiful, really lively texture. Then they also added a second guilloche in the sub-registers of the perpetual calendar, and that style is called Clou de Paris. And basically there, when you get it in the right light, and I'm kind of moving it around here so you can see it, it just adds a whole different element to the dial. It makes it really interesting. Now, lastly, on this dial, again in particular, they layer it with enamel, which is, like I mentioned, a powdered glass, and then they can use different colors. So this one is quite stunning. It's almost, in this light, it looks a little bit of a light sky blue, but it's a little bit darker and it has a little more green to it than just a standard blue does. So just a really, really stunning color. Now, the third reason that JLC offers the best dress watches is how wearable they are. So let me demonstrate this for you. Now, I have pretty small wrists. They're about 6 inches in circumference, but their standard Master Ultra Thin case is going to be just 39 millimeters. It's about 10 millimeters thick and roughly 46 millimeters from lug to lug. So if you measure across this distance here, if I turn the case sideways, from here to here, it's about 46 millimeters, and that is very wearable by folks with small wrists like myself, as well as with ladies, and I think that's pretty cool. And the low profile they have on the wrist makes them really easy to wear. Again, you're talking just over 10 millimeters thick on this one, depending on the watch, right about at 10 millimeters. So it's a very, very wearable watch, will slide underneath a dress cuff easily, and has a pretty low profile on the wrist. Now, all of these variants that I've talked about come with an alligator leather strap and either a JL featured pin buckle like this one, or some sort of a folding deployant clasp, which is great. And of course, you will also find tourbillon models in the catalog too, if you really want to go upscale. Now, you might be thinking, James, what about the Reverso? Well, yeah, I mean, the Reverso is certainly very well known and is iconic, not just to JLC, but really to the watch industry. But personally, I'd prefer my dress watches to just be a little bit more modern. And most of the Reverso models that I've seen are just a bit too classic looking for my taste. So it doesn't mean they're not great watches, with certainly an interesting story to tell. But I far prefer the Master Ultra Thin series. And, you know, it's rare for me that I could look at one single line from any brand, one model line, and not only say, hey, there's this one version of that I would love to own, but that I'd like to own all of them. And that is the case for me with Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Ultra Thin line. So in addition to the reasons that I've mentioned, that is why I do think that the best dress watches out here on the market are from JLC. Now, as far as pricing goes, I think for what you're getting, the pricing is actually pretty reasonable because you are getting some hand finishing on this. Obviously, a piece like this, you're getting some real artistry with the dial and everything they've done there. But the pricing is not bad. And if you go pre-owned, there's even better value to be found there as well. So that's my thoughts on the best dress watches for men and for ladies. And there is one answer and one answer only: Jaeger-LeCoultre. So what about you? What do you think are the best dress watches out there? Comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for joining me, and I want you to know and love your watches. So I will see you next time. Bye-bye.